All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're actually embarking on kind of a detective story, but, we aren't tracking down a person. We are literally tracking down the very beginning of reality itself. We're going to use pure logic to reverse engineer the universe and find its absolute starting point. We'll be looking at a really fascinating piece of source material that uses 8 logical deductions to trace the origins of, well, everything around us. It's a huge journey, going from the everyday, mundane objects sitting right there on your desk all the way to the cosmic forces spinning the galaxies. So let's get started.
Okay, before we really get going, we need to define our terms. In our source material, the text uses the Chinese word shangdi. Now, often this just gets translated simply as God in a traditional religious sense, but honestly, that brings along a whole lot of dogmatic baggage that doesn't fit here. Instead, the source uses this term to logically deduce the existence of an ultimate prime mover. So, for absolute clarity in this explainer, we are translating this into its functional philosophical reality, the greatest creator. We aren't talking about religion or blind faith today, we're talking about an ultimate originator, a core energy, an uncaused cause that the source deduces through pure observation.
To wrap our heads around this, we're going to follow 4 distinct logical deductions today: the source of everything, the first motive force, energy and form, and finally, the ultimate first cause.
Let's jump right into Section 1. The source of everything. From pencils to planets.
Think about the profound juxtaposition here for a second. On one hand, every single tool we use, from a basic yellow pencil to the wildly complex computer you might be watching this on, has a clear origin point. Every piece of music, every single mathematical theorem, they were deliberately brought into existence. Human beings created them. But on the other hand, consider massive natural wonders, the Amazon River, the mighty Himalayas, the ocean currents. They don't just pop out of thin air either. They have definitive geographic and historical starting points, formed by immense planetary shifts.
Let's do a cosmic zoom out to really grasp the scale of this logic. Tools and art, they obviously trace back to human inventors. Human races across the globe, they trace back to ancient ancestors. The massive, sprawling geography of our planet traces back to ancient tectonic and planetary shifts. And if we just keep zooming out, the Earth, the solar system itself, they trace all the way back to the birth of the universe. Absolutely nothing is without an origin point.
Which brings us to a massive, inevitable question. If we follow this chain, if absolutely everything has an origin, what is the ultimate starting point of the universe itself? Our source text concludes that, logically, there must inherently be a first ultimate source. And this initial absolute source of all these origins is exactly what we are calling the greatest creator.
Moving right along to Section 2, the first motive force, a universe in relentless motion.
So the crucial takeaway here is that reality is in a state of constant, relentless motion. At the micro level, you have electrons spinning and particles flowing like crazy. In biology, right now, hearts are beating, blood is pumping, even the grass outside is actively growing. Out in nature, winds dance and rivers surge toward the sea. And at the cosmic level, massive galaxies are rotating endlessly. The universe is just an incredibly busy place.
But here's where the logic gets really tight. The source introduces this concept of mutual pushing. You see, objects in our universe don't just wake up and decide to move on their own. They literally require an external push. A river flows because gravity pulls it. The wind blows because temperature differentials push the air around. Everything in motion is pushed by something else in motion, creating this massive, endless chain reaction of kinetic energy.
So I have to ask you, where does the very first push come from? If everything needs a push to move, you can't just have an infinite regression of pushes without a starting point, right? The text deduces that without an ultimate prime mover, the greatest creator, to provide that initial, completely unpushed motive force, motion simply couldn't exist in the first place.
Okay, Section 3, Energy and Form, the illusion of blueprints.
This is fascinating because form is literally nothing without energy. Think about a blueprint for a house. It's just an idea, a phantom concept on paper, until human and mechanical energy are pumped into it to actually build the thing. Or consider a simple seed. It holds a wildly complex genetic structure, a biological blueprint, but it remains entirely dormant, just a tiny hard shell, unless it absorbs environmental energy, water, nutrients from the soil, solar heat. Structure is basically an illusion without raw energy.
Let's actually reverse engineer this with a specific example straight from the text. Step 1. A tree flourishes in a forest. Why? Well, step 2, because it absorbs rainwater. Where does the water come from? Step 3. Rain falls from clouds. Step 4. Those clouds were blown inland by massive ocean winds. And step 5. Those winds were created by the thermal rotation of the Earth as it spins and heats up under the sun. So that simple tree relying on a little rainwater is actually plugging directly into the massive kinetic and thermal energy of the entire planet's rotation. It's wild.
But according to the law of conservation of energy, the universe has no perpetual motion machines. Energy must come from somewhere. So, what originally propelled the Earth to spin? What ignited the sun? The logic dictates that since energy is fundamentally required to actualize all forms, the original unconstrained energy source sitting at the very top of this chain has to be the greatest creator.
And that brings us to section 4, the ultimate first cause, decoding the chaos.
We can basically categorize all the chaos of our world into biological, natural, and historical events. Whether it's a minor headache or a congenital disease, a devastating typhoon, or just the normal shifting of the seasons, or even massive historical events like World War II or the sinking of the Titanic. The text insists that absolutely nothing happens without a cause. Even things that seem totally random or totally unfair, they all have a strict, direct causal lineage.
Once again, if we reverse engineer the chain, we trace the cause of local phenomena all the way back to the macro structures of deep space. Life phenomena on Earth only exist because of the highly precise conditions of the solar system. The solar system only exists because of the gravitational dynamics of the Milky Way. And the Milky Way exists because of the explosive birth of the universe itself. It is one giant, unbroken chain of cause and effect.
This leads us to a terrifying but honestly beautiful absolute rule derived from the source, the rule of causality. You cannot find a single result, a single phenomenon in the entire universe that lacks a fundamental cause. Every single effect demands a cause, period. So we have to ask the final, ultimate question. If every single effect has a cause, what is the ultimate uncaused cause at the very dawn of the universe? You just cannot have an infinite chain of causes. Something had to strike the very first match. The source's logical deduction confirms that this first, ultimate dynamic cause is, once again, the greatest creator.
All right, let's wrap this all up. Conclusion: the unavoidable beginning.
We've explored the 4 pillars laid out by the source material today. 1. The greatest creator is the ultimate source of all things, from our pencils to the planets. 2. It's the initial push that sparked all relentless motion. 3. It's the unconstrained energy required to turn dormant blueprints into actualized reality. And 4. It's the first cause of every single event in the cosmic chain. This functional philosophy logically mandates an ultimate originator. And notice, it reaches this conclusion not by relying on blind faith, but simply through observing the strict rules of physics, motion, and causality.
The text distills all this perfectly into a single, really powerful thesis. Everything has an origin. Therefore, there must inherently be a first ultimate source, the greatest creator. It's a profound realization, really. When you strip away the chaos of everyday life and just follow the threads of logic backward, they all converge at a single, completely unavoidable point.
We've reverse-engineered the universe today, tracing the steps back to the very first spark. But I want to leave you with this thought to chew on. If reality is indeed built on this unbroken logical chain of cause, energy, and motion, where do you fit within the grand design of the greatest creator? Because you are a result of that exact same unbroken chain. So what is your push? What is your cause? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the universe.